Welcome to the updates for April 2023 from Google. These are all the updates relating to the admin panel, so they're what we call our Techy Tuesday updates. So we'll just kick straight in with the first ones. So I wonder why this is even there, because whilst I was reading through this again this morning just to refresh myself on what they were, I'm thinking even in the largest organizations, they've got to be pretty huge, as perhaps accepting someone like Google to have more than 500 super admins or even admin roles, because I think that's a whole complex of people with admin access that you wouldn't necessarily need. That being said, they've now set it so that there always has been a limit of you can't have more than 500. What you can now do is you can have a group email to assign admin access to a whole group of people all at once. And the one that would have been useful for me when I was still in school was the help desk admin. That my school, whilst it wasn't huge, it was actually spread out in a kind of a higgledy-piggledy set of old buildings, which meant access to people was a bit tricky and things. And we only had one technician. So I had 5 members of staff that agreed to be help desk admin. What that allowed them to do was to change the passwords. So those professional password collectors that would wander around the school for 20% of their school life trying to get their passwords changed rather than doing any work, and kind of quickly disappeared because there were several teachers dotted around the school that they could go to quickly to get their password reset without having to go and find a single person that wasn't necessarily always even available or even on site, because we were a split site. So it just meant that I had easy access to get that password change. So I could have set that help desk admin to all those 5 people all at once, nice and easily. So it gives you that scope if you want to. Yes, Dave, if you want to raise your hand and say something.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the thing, Paul. It's not just the fact that you necessarily go over that 500 limit, although I do know some schools that would offer this role to all teachers, for example. And when you scale that up through a trust, you could quite easily approach that.
Oh, yeah,
but the other thing is that the key thing in terms of managing that is that it's much easier just to have teachers at madeuptrust.com as an admin, and then when somebody's added to that group, they automatically inherit that permission. So it's not just, it's more about not having to individually add in each individual teacher. You're managing them in one place rather than in multiple places throughout the admin panel. So I think that some organizations might get close to that 500 limit if they're using it in that respect, but also it's more about the simplicity of managing that for us admins. Yeah,
that's true. And actually help desk admin I think is a good, I mean, so there's a training implication, isn't there? But a really useful thing for your teachers to have, because they got, they can navigate through your organizational tree, they can find an individual and they can give them, and of course, because it's not super admin, you can give it to them to just their class, if their class happens to be in an organizational unit of their own, or the classes that they teach. So you've got scope to be quite specific with how you manage it. So it just means that, and like Dave said, that once they're in the group, all the assignments would happen automatically because they're in that group if they get added, and so on and so forth. So it makes the management of all those things that much easier for you. So certainly one to consider. And if you've never thought about giving password resets to staff, then I think that could, you think about how many times you do that. Some kids seem determined to forget it every week, don't they? It would save you, because it's a trivial role and one that you can easily assign to other people that've got the skills to do it. So that's certainly one to think about.
Just on that, Andy stuck a quick note in the chat there that he gives permissions for password changing to all his staff. So again, good example there. Thanks, Andy, for that.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Andy. Yeah, exactly right. So that's the first one.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, we're a much smaller school and not a great big trust, but I think it's worth re-emphasising a point that Dave said about the fact that if you do use groups of these, then what you can do is you can link multiple permissions, if you like, to those groups, and it's much easier to handle that as a group rather than keep going into individual people and adding, if you like, individual permissions. So it's a really useful feature once you sort of get your head around it about how it works. But it certainly pays dividends to do that.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that, Andy. James, did you see your hand up?
No.
Oh, okay, right, excellent. Moving on then. So teaching and learning upgrade and education plus, you have now got full HD in Google Meet video calls.
Maybe Paul's demonstrating what happens when you turn full HD on here.
I think Paul may have frozen there. Yeah, full HD for the C learning staff, not recommended in the slightest. I don't know where he's gone there. I wonder if he realizes he's completely frozen. Let me just drop him a quick note in the chat there.
It's definitely not in HD there, is it?
Just whilst we're talking about video calls
he's
and
back.
Is he
webcams.
back? Yeah.
Oh, is he?
No, sorry, no, he's not.
No,
I heard a ping.
That was me. Just whilst we're talking about that, I noticed when I joined this meeting, and I noticed last week, but it's only just hit me. Does anybody else have that element where you're in the waiting room, where it kind of resizes your screen for you in terms of what's showing on your webcam? I don't know whether that's linked to the full HD or whether it's been there for a while. But when I joined this meeting, it kind of zoomed in to just show my big round head rather than further things around me. Don't know. Obviously, some kind of intelligent management of it going on there, and I don't know whether it was linked to that release, whether I'm stealing Paul's thunder for a subsequent slide, or whether I just hadn't noticed and it's been there for years.
Not sure. I've not noticed that, but I'll certainly keep an eye out and have a look at if there is something along those lines. So, yeah.
Yeah, we tend to kind of join, having set the meetings up, Dave. It's not a thing that I experience very often, to be honest. In fact, I can't remember the last one where we've joined a meeting where it wasn't a C learning set one. So I've not kind of come across that, so I'm not entirely sure.
I would imagine that it would do it at the beginning of each meeting now, rather than it's just noticeable to me because I was in the waiting room. Yeah. Anyway, that's filled that section nicely, and here, in glorious standard definition, is Mr. Farrell.
Keep it on 360, Paul. I think you're muted at the moment, mate, as well. Yes, you are. You're muted, Mr. Farrell.
Yeah. He's making a lot more sense since he's muted, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There he is.
I'm back in the room. Everything's just loading back up again. Just give me a second while it all loads back up again. I think I need a new Chrome box. I think that's what it is.
Did you turn 1080 on your webcam? Is that what killed it?
No, I didn't actually. It died anyway. So it's and I haven't got a huge number of tabs open in particularly. So it's taking forever to load. So come on, any minute now. Nearly there. It has collapsed a couple of times over the last month or so, and I do keep meaning to say to Steve, I think I need a new Chrome box on my desk. Come on, nearly there. Any minute now. It's fascinating, isn't it, watching me struggle?
The good news is that this is being recorded, so you've got all the evidence that you need for Steve that you do actually need.
But the good news is also that I edited it afterwards. So hopefully that should come on. Oh, it's going snail's pace. I definitely do need a new device. I completely factory reset it last month, thinking that'll resolve it, and it clearly hasn't. So anyway, we've just done that one, so I'm going to move on.
Just on that one, Paul, before you go, Dave was just mentioning that he's noticed when he's in like the waiting room, waiting to be allowed in, that his kind of image is being rescaled and whatnot, and wondered whether it was something to do with that. I don't know whether you've any extra info on that or not at this stage.
There was something, wasn't there? Was it last month or the month before about there are now additional. In fact, that video actually shows it. This little GIF shows it. There are additional settings out there at the bottom of the screen in the waiting room before you join. I don't know whether it's part of that, but there is definitely something. I can't remember exactly what it was now, but in the last couple of months, there's been something about kind of auto setting the thing. You probably just can't believe how incredibly attractive you are, Dave. Just focusing to check there's not something wrong with the camera, that you haven't got some filters over the top to make you even more gorgeous. Maybe it's that.
Yeah, maybe, hey, Paul. I think we all know the chances of that.
But I think there was an announcement about some adjustments being made, and it was all part of that kind of improvement in the meet environment, I think. But I don't remember the details. So moving on. So this is in there really. There's nothing for you to do particularly. but it's just to remind you and to remind your users about Cloud Search. Those of you who have Education Plus as your subscription, it's one that I'm noticing the more demonstrations I do about the additional tool you get, the people are saying, "Oh, I didn't even know we had this." And it's a fantastic search tool. And Chris and I have spoken a number of times about how brilliant it is. We use it pretty extensively to find things when our kind of vague search criteria don't seem to find it. If we're using the search within Gmail, for example, it does seem to find it that bit better. So it's definitely worth looking at. And it's now getting even better because basically it will remember the search criteria that you used and try and make suggestions to improve your search results on kind of fewer criteria. But it will also look at the common search patterns amongst all the users within your domain and use that to build in suggestions as well. So, you know, if you're all working on the project together, then it might well be that those kinds of searches that Chris and I and James and Cisco and all the rest of the team are searching for will start to appear in our Cloud Search things, which I think is kind of quite neat, actually. So, so just to be aware of that, that's happening, and you should see an improvement in those searches with amongst your staff, and it's a chance maybe to remind them that that tool is there. Andy, yes.
Just a question on that. Do you have to go through the Cloud Search facility with that? Do you have to actually use that, or
you do? Yes,
you do.
You do, yeah.
Because it comes up. It sort of by default uses the Cloud Search. If you search for like in your drive and things, odd times it comes up with other areas and locations. I think. I don't know whether anybody else has noticed that.
All right, maybe that's the plan long term, that they do get built into.
But it
becomes part of everything, but.
Yeah, but explicitly for that feature, you need to use the Cloud Search app off the launch. Okay.
Yeah, or cloudsearch.google.com will get you there as well. But yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So. This one I thought was an interesting one, and when it popped up, I didn't actually even know that this wasn't necessarily even there. But you can set a custom time limit on any chat messages. So if, for example, you made a decision that you need to get students used to, you know, chat environments because it's part of their, you know, the skills that they're going to need when they leave school and go into the world of work or wherever they go, then you've got the option now to set deletion rules for all the chat messages. You can do it by OU for one-to-one messages, but only by domain for chat spaces and groups. And it is currently turned off by default. So if you think if you've got a retention policy that says no, we shouldn't really be keeping, you are giving, you know, some of your older students the option to have chat as a tool. You might say, well, actually, they don't really need to keep it much longer than, and then you can set a deletion period for those messages so that you don't end up with a huge amount of stuff. I mean, I know Dave has, in the last year or more, has just changed and considered their retention policy within their multi-academy trust, because a number of subject access requests could leave them with office staff spending you know, months and months redacting stuff before they can actually share it with someone. It's not a sensible, you know, to go and keep everything forever, and just for the sake of one subject access request, you'd be cursing yourself if you do that. So think carefully about that. And you've now got the option to control it within chat as well and remove stuff, because if it's not in your control and you haven't got that data, then you can't offer it as a part of a subject access request, can you? So that's there and available for you should you want to make use of it. Education Plus and Education Standards are not the teaching and learning, just the security one, which is the standard one, and the Education Plus version. So this is just a quick one. If you use Apple devices within your organization, you're going to start to get alerts in the alert bell inside the admin panel for when the push notifications expire, certificates expire. You'll get a 3010-1 and then it's expired notification. That's nice and simple, but just to be aware that they'll start to appear in your bell. Can I just ask, do people use the bell as a reminder of things that they need to do? Is it somewhere you go frequently to check?
Only when it gets that little red dot that just annoys me, because I have OCD about those things. So it kind of works in that respect. So
you get a little red dot like you do in messages inside Google Meets and things to say there's something there.
Yeah.
But it's red, not blue. I think it's blue in Meet. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else use that? alerts?
I use it, but very, very, very rarely.
Okay. I mean, there's been a number of things added into it, hasn't there, recently, which is kind of quite nice. But okay, so it gets limited use. I mean, I suppose if you got it all managed, then it confirms things rather than reminds you to do them, doesn't it? Rather than, but anyway, okay, good. Thank you for that. But they are now there now. So you've got Apple notifications, certification notifications are there. So those are all the admin panel direct ones that affect you directly. But there were a few from the user updates from last week, which I thought I'd remind you of because I thought they were pertinent and you might well get questions from your staff about. So I'm just going to go through some of those. First one is currents, and I think we gathered from our little mini poll last month that there's very little use of this. But to be aware that if you have got anyone in your organization that's using currents, then you need to get them to stop because it's being wound down and all that kind of stuff. The focus is they're going to want people to use chat. The currents is going to go. So those are the key dates. You can take stuff out if they want to take stuff out. They want to keep hold of it until August the 8th. After that, there'll be no data available at all. So they've not got a great deal of time at all. Is that 2 months? August, June, July, no, 3 months. So just to be aware that that's coming and they won't be able to get to it from the 5th of July at all. So that's that one. Practice sets are now generally available. And you should be able to check by going to Classroom homepage and clicking on the 3 bars, sometimes called the burger button or the pancake stack, and it's the 3rd option down. But you'll also get it in the panel when you open an assignment at the bottom where you got your Drive, your YouTube, your link, and all those other bits that you can add at the bottom of an assignment. So the practice sets will be there as well. So you should now start to be able to use those with your organization. You should also find that you're getting a broader range of options in terms of the types of questions that you can ask. I think early days when it was first set up, it was fantastic for maths and the sciences, where responses are a bit more binary and fixed responses, but you're able to put in some more broader kind of humanities and languages type questions now. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't looked at it recently, to go back and try out a range of questions just to see what you've got. And of course the whole thing about sharing is now that bit easier to do. So that's definitely worth having a look at and making use. And I think its scope is only going to grow and grow. It will just continue to get better. It will continue to improve and service lots and lots of your teachers and subjects as it continues to improve. So it's definitely one to watch. So please go and take the time to go and have a look at that. That should be in place now. Teaching and Learning and Education Plus only. This is a reminder from last month. The Google Reminders, which is in Google Calendar, is going to go, and they're going to be migrated to tasks. I just need to open my notes because there were some dates in here that I was keen for you to. So starting on May the 22nd, you're going to assistant and calendar reminders will begin to automatically migrate to tasks for users that are not already migrated them. Okay, so in order to make that happen, you've got to make sure that the tasks is on for your organization. If the tasks are off, any reminders data will not be migrated to tasks, and the reminders data deletion will be initiated from the 22nd of June. So if you're not using it, if it's not turned on in a minute, then that's not going to be an effect at all, is it? Because it won't matter. But if there happens to be any historical data in there, then that'll start to be deleted from June the 22nd. So just be aware of that. If people want to start to take that data and you've got other solutions in place that you use rather than tasks, then you need to give people the option to use takeout if that isn't currently turned on, so they can take it out and put it into the whichever format they're going to be using. And there's also some stuff about if you're using Assistant. I mean, generally, I don't think anyone using Google Assistant on their Chromebooks. So that doesn't apply, but there is some guidance in there about that as well. So just to be aware of that, should you need to make that available, because there's kind of the reminders in that as well. I presume there must be some kind of link to that in there as well. I didn't read that bit particularly, but there's a reminder in there. And as always, the link on the top of the slide will take you to that page where all that information is, and links to other relevant pages, so you can make sure that it's in place. But you haven't got long now before the data starts to be forced across. So May the 22nd, it'll start to be automatically migrated. So just to be aware that's going to happen. So just some reminders to staff to keep on the ball and be aware and ready for the change. So I mentioned this last week as well. I mention it again because there are some things that I think you might well be more involved in than as well as your staff. So with all of these are live webinars. There are still a few in May, maybe the last 2 or 3, I can't remember exactly, that are still to happen. So you can attend them live. But if you go in to the product training series link and register, you can get access to all the recordings. And there are a few things in there. There's one about preventing phishing. There's one about kind of data visualization, which I thought you might be more involved in. So there's some really nice little built-in security features within Chrome devices. So it's definitely worth going to have a look and to share them with your, thanks Stu, thanks for coming along, share them with your staff, because there are definitely some in there that they would be glad to have as well at the same time. So do please think about that. You know, I think it's about 15 of those, is there? I can't count how many there are. There's quite a number, and there are some really good ones. So it's definitely worth going to have a look. So that's that one. And then they've redesigned all the learning pathways, this is what you'll be calling them, all the courses in the education teacher centre. There's now 2 strands. There's an educator strand and there's an IT strand. There are courses specifically for the paid versions of Google Workspace, so the teaching and learning standard and the Education Plus, so you can look at precisely what it is that you're going to get. And there are badges to be collected, and let's not pretend ourselves, staff like to collect badges just as much as the kids do, so it's a really nice thing that you can do that. I did say last week that I thought you needed to be signed into your admin account in order to access those IT admin courses. I did send a message out to my contacts at Google, and that's been fixed now, so anyone even without an admin course should still be able to go and do those courses. There's not a requirement to be a super admin, as appeared to be the case last week. So that's great news. And again, teaching and learning ones, Education Plus ones, so they're really quite nice little things. There aren't that many admin courses. It would be nice to see some more. And while I was thinking about that, I was reminded that those of you who are looking for certifications in the admin panel, the Chrome OS Administrator course currently is free. The normal cost, completing the course online is free, of course, but to actually sit the exam is normally $120 something, but they're currently offering it for free until January 24. And I'm aware, Dave, you had a go, didn't you? You weren't very impressed with the exam itself, but did you complete it in the end?
Yeah, I did. There was a few issues when I did it the first time around, which would have been about October last year. It kind of bond out. The exam is 2 parts. You've got a multiple choice section in the first part, and then an actual lab element like you used to have in the educator exams back in the day when educator exams were actually worthwhile. And it crashed in between. It told me that I passed the first part and then wouldn't load the second part, and there was no way to give feedback. So anyway, I ended up getting through to somebody at Google in the end, giving them a load of feedback. Turned out that it was one lady who was on mat leave who was kind of behind all this, and she was very apologetic. But yeah, eventually went through it. It was okay. It was when I finally did get access to it, I failed it the first time, and it didn't give me any indication as to why. And I've got a little bit of experience of using the admin panel, so I
just a bit
would have liked a little bit of a pointer in terms of, okay, well, you know, failure is good. You can learn something through failure, but where did I fail? And that's one of the things that I was questioning with Google. You know, we work in education, it's all about giving feedback. Their response was that that's not how professional exams work. It's a very US centric model, as always, isn't it? Whereby you've either reached the standard or you haven't. I resat it and passed it the second time. It's worth the money at its current price. I don't know that I would be keen on paying for my team to take it at $125. So I have asked all my team to do it because I think there is some value in there, but it's quite niche in some areas. The areas that the exam goes into. Right. But yeah, do it whilst it's free. Definitely, I think it's well worth looking after that.
I mean, it struck me useful if you've got new staff that are unfamiliar with Google at all. Yeah, they are going to start to learn how to navigate around the admin panel as part of that process of learning how it works and things. So that might actually in itself be a good thing. So
The course is definitely worth doing. Like I say, it was the exam that I was less complimentary about.
yeah, okay, excellent. Thanks for that, Andy. That's really useful.
That's all right, Chris.
And then just last little thing, a quick reminder about the fact that you've got the Google Workspace admin help site should you ever need any help or are stuck. But you have, of course, got our virtual staff room updates group where you can post questions in there. And there are better brains than mine, like James and Dave and Andy and the like, who are also in there that will offer help and support should you need it. So do please make sure you make use of those tools and those chat spaces that are there. It's always great to be able to help and support people. And then the last one, you've now got the option to set default label values for files in your Google Drive, which seems like a really a good thing to be able to do in terms of managing any potential data loss within your organization. So you can automatically say, well, there's the finance department, there are all the people in that organizational unit, automatically set our finance label to those documents for anyone that creates a document in that file. And the file label is applied at the moment of creation, and then if they change the ownership for some reason, it reapplies those labels there. But don't forget, the reason I put that DLP note in there is that once you've got the label in place and labels are applied, you can then apply a data loss protection rule to say, if this label applies, restrict sharing, for example. So you've got a way to control the data within your organization with a bit more certainty with the use of these labels. I didn't put it on there, but I'm pretty certain that it's Teaching and Learning and Education Plus only. I'm hesitant about Teaching and Learning, but certainly Education Plus, but I think it is both of those two. So just to be aware that you've got those tools should you want them. And I think they are really, really powerful. And if you aren't currently using them, I think you definitely should take the time to apply them. So can I ask anyone currently using labels on their documents for some or all of their staff?
No, I'm not using that. Just interestingly, it's just triggered a thought. I don't want to hijack. I'll come back in a minute and make the point if there's anybody else got to add any things on there. But it's just triggered a thought regarding Google Drive and names of labels.
Yeah, go for it, Andy. Let's finish your thought. That's sensible.
No, all I was going to say was we were looking at some things to do with classroom the other day, trying to have a look with a student about tracing through their work and have a look at it, but from the perspective of their drive, having a look at how all the files are indexed within their Google Drive. And what I noticed that was if at some point the teachers have changed the name of the classroom, then that unfortunately doesn't seem to cascade that name change through Google Drive structure under classroom. I don't know if anybody else has seen that, or whether it can be overcome with GAM, I don't know. But it seems like if your classroom is renamed, because you might have some sort of moderation across the school where you have a consistent way of naming your classrooms, and if people don't name that at the get-go and later go back and change it, then it doesn't seem to cascade that through to students.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that actually. I presume it doesn't break the link. The folders are still linked to the classroom. Just the name
doesn't break the link. No, it just doesn't rename them. So if you're looking at the front end in classroom, you see the name of the class. You go in the back end, you can't always find that. I've done a little bit of trial, chopping and changing, and it seems to do it if you're a teacher. It does propagate through, but not if you're a student.
All right. That's interesting.
Which is just a bit weird.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thanks for that. I'll have a little bit of that when I get a chance.
Have you experienced that at all?
No, I haven't, but I guess we're less likely to come across that because we set up Google Classrooms for each class at the start of the academic year through Salamander. So we would only see that if there was a change to the class name, which is almost unheard of, but it's interesting, that one. I can see why it would apply to the teachers folder, because it kind of that's created at the point of creation of the classroom. It's the student one is only created at the point of joining, isn't it? So
That's
it's
right,
an
yeah.
interesting one to be aware of that.
Mm.
And I guess if your mechanism for communication is purely through Google Classroom, it's less of an issue. But if you have students that are in the habit of saving things directly into the folder, then maybe maybe it'll trip some people up. So good to be aware of that. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to my, thank you very much for that, Andy. That's exactly right. Any other thoughts about labels? Anyone else using labels and applying them in their DLP rules or not?
We're not doing, but I think there's tremendous potential there. Dean Stokes did something at the last ANME meeting in the Northwest, where he was setting these up and having things automatically populated, and it really is quite powerful what you can do with it. I guess my ownership is, I've just read the word ownership as I was speaking. My issue is always around not putting unnecessary barriers in front of people to achieve what they want to do from a teaching and learning perspective. So I think your example of using it for example, the finance team or the safeguarding team might be the area that I would look into, rather than just going too gung-ho. I think I'd like to pilot it a little bit and see what the impact was first. But data loss protection isn't something that we, rightly or wrongly, are massively concerned about. We'd rather make sure that people can do the job and deal with the business of the school and teach the kids.
Yeah. The DLP rule is not my strong point here at all, but I do know, I'm pretty certain that what you can do is you can actually set it to an alert. So you say, it's the finance department, if they're going to share a document that has these financial information in it, an alert pops up that says you're about to share it outside your organization. Are you sure? So you don't have to necessarily block everything. It's an extra level of checking that makes them stop and think for a moment. And it probably doesn't make everyone stop and think, does it? We've all done that, haven't we? Clicked those terms and conditions and not read them, But I do think it's an extra level of, stop and think for a briefest of moments that might be.
We have that rule turned on as default for sharing outside of the organisation.
Yeah,
it has saved us on a couple of occasions, but I think this is a little bit more granular than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Andy?
Yeah, just a question to check my understanding of this. Does this mean if you create what used to be called a team drive, shared drive for, say, the finance team, that it automatically creates some labels underneath that? Or am I barking up the wrong tree completely there? What is this exactly?
Yeah, that my understanding is that you can say,
Paul.
Yeah, go on then, James.
Yeah, it's basically to do with your data classification, Andy. So, for example, if you've got an organizational unit which is called finance or HR or something like that, then you can create a label under the data classification and then apply a DLP rule to it. Now, with the DLP rules are on any educational admin console that are what they call system defined ones. So those are the bog standard Google rules that keep you safe at any time. But you can create your own sort of like custom DLP rules, and those are predefined as well. Some of them are predefined. So you can say, okay, create a rule that says if it's got a UK driving license number, NHS number, or national insurance number, do not allow it to be shared outside of the domain, or create a warning. You can also set custom rules in the DLP. So, for example, with some of the universities that we deal with that are heavily into research, they might have, they're interested in protecting their intellectual property. So you can create a data loss prevention rule that says that uses key trigger words. So if they've got a project that's called out, I don't know, say Project Alpha, which is a big research project, if any document within the domain contains Project Alpha anywhere in the document, then you can restrict it. So you can sort of like say, do not allow it to be shared, do not allow this to happen, do not allow that to happen. So that's basically DLP in a heartbeat. You can use, like I say, you've got the predefined Google system rules. You can create your own ones for more sensitive information, like I say, driving license, credit card numbers, that sort of thing. But then you can also do it by terms. Will that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I say exactly what you're doing there. So it's over and above, if you like, the rules that are already there that Paul alluded to, where they might pop up automatically because you've got financial information in or something. So it's like bespoke rules that you can set up within DLP.
Yep, correct.
Right.
Any other thoughts? Any other questions from anyone else about default labels, DLP? And I'll just finish by saying thank you very much for coming along. The next update is Tuesday, the 6th of June. For the Techy Tuesday ones, of course. We're back to the Monday, Tuesday pattern. So the Monday will be the end user and the Tuesday will be the Techy Tuesday one. And with that, I'll say thank you very much for coming along.